Hello and welcome to the newest episode of the Great Travel Warriors of Bharat monthly series. This is based on this book of which I am the co-author, and since January 2023 we have been following the lives and times of the 17 warriors mentioned in this book. And it's quite fascinating to see how month by month the freedom struggle of these warriors have been going forward, and at times they actually look like mirror images of each other happening in diverse geographies. The month of May needs to be remembered for the capture and execution of Alluri, Sitaram, Raju. Raju was caught on the 6th of May 1924 by a patrolling unit of the Assam Rifles from the forests of Chintapalli. This unit had been deployed by the British for nabbing Alluri, Sitaram, Raju, and it had been deployed since the month of January that year. And finally, after 5 months of intense search efforts, they met with success. It's not as successful as Indians, but for them, from their point of view, it was a success. And so after capture on the 6th, he was brought to the village of Koyuri on the 7th, where he was tied to a tree and shot dead. The next day, which is the 8th of May, his body was tied to a cord and brought in the standing position to the village of Krishnadevapeta, and there he was buried. And with this, the valors of this great soul came to an end. As the month comes to an end, 30 June is going to be an exciting time for all of us because that's when salary is going to be credited. But for those of us with an interest in the history of Indian freedom struggle, 30 June represents something altogether different. 30 June is Hul Divas. Hul is a Santhali word meaning insurrection or revolution, and it was on this day in 1855 that four brothers, Siddo, Kano, Chand, Bhairav, led the entire Santhal community, the entire Santhal tribe, in a revolution, in a revolt against the British administration. What led to this? Well, for the details of this, you have the option of reading all about it in the book, or you can just revisit the earlier videos so that you get a fair idea as to what were the kind of grievances and difficulties that the Santhali people were facing from the darogas, the zamindars, the landlords and the British officials. But in short, they were aggrieved people. Nobody was listening to their grievances, and the entire justice system was also such that by the time the matter came to the British official, it was either too late or the official was just too indifferent about it. And in either case, it was just not helping. So they were a depressed, difficult, heartbroken lot of people, and they were looking for help. And the help came in the form of their own people giving leadership on what they should be doing next. And it so happened that earlier in that month of June 1855, the Murmu brothers, Siddo, Kano, Chand, Bhairav, started getting visions of their Santhali deity, Thakurji, and he came in the form of a cartwheel sometimes, fire, book, pen. He came in many forms, in short, and every time he gave a visitation, there was a visitation from him. He encouraged them, the brothers, to lead their people from the sad position that they are in, from this unliberated state to a liberated state. And they took this as a divine sign to start their revolution. And so they wanted to next gather the villagers for this. And for this they passed branches of the sal tree. And every village that was going to accept this message of Thakurji had to receive that branch. And if they were not willing to be part of this gathering, they had to just let it go. So through this traditional means of communication, they gathered about 10,000 people. And in parallel, what they also did was they sent a letter to the British officer for the region, administering the region, that they've got a set of grievances that they have been talking about since a really long time. And now the government has just 15 days time to respond to it. And at the end of those 15 days, if the Santhali people do not hear from the officer, then there is going to be a revolt. So the warning was given out well in advance and the preparations were already in tow. And when the 15th day came, which coincided with 30th of June, it being 30th of June, there was no response. And so 10,000 people started marching towards Calcutta to raise their grievances in person. This is the life-changing moment of the Santhal history and their contribution towards Indian freedom struggle. Quiz time! When did Nagpur become a British protectorate? The name Tana Bhagat sounds more like a person's name than a name for a movement. So if you have been hearing or reading about it in the newspapers and feeling confused, well, you are not alone. I know of many well-known people and brands who have fallen victim to this confusion. So let's get this sorted. Tana Bhagat is the name of a movement started by a young man named Jatra Oraon. Oraon is the tribe to which he belongs. For more about who Jatra Oraon is and what kind of disobedience he gave a demonstration of to the British, please check out the video for the month of April. In short, Jatra Oraon was a young man who was leading his people against the brutalities of the British administration in his region. And that region came under the jurisdiction of the Orissa government. The British administration had this very bad policy of using the tribal folks for carrying their baggages or working as coolies in construction projects or working as drum beaters, water carriers when they were traveling. And this was not acceptable to the Oraon tribe because they were a self-respecting race like everybody else and they were majorly into cultivation. So this was totally alien to them. There were many other grievances as well, but this was chief reason number one. So Jatra had been advocating that everyone should raise objection to this. And obviously the British were not going to like it. Officers were strictly against it. Around the same time, Jatra, just like the Murmu brothers, also started having divine visitations of their Oraoni deity. And in that, the message that he received was to lead the Oraoni tribe to salvation and to speedily attain salvation in God, they had to resort to a simple living. So in one way you can say that what Jatra Oraon started was a movement which was both spiritual in nature and also had the potential to be called a freedom struggle. So it was a combination of both. Now, had he just stuck to keeping it a spiritual awakening movement, the British would not have been worried because it was all about chanting, praying, living a simple life, staying away from addiction and temptation. So this was actually very good. But what he also had as a part of the movement was saying no to the atrocities of the British. Now this was not acceptable. Administration wanted cheap labor. They were not willing to give it. Obviously, this was going to be a point of conflict. And so, amidst a lot of confusions, a lot of aggression from both sides, with one British officer even claiming that Jatra is actually a lunatic and needs to be put under the care of the civil surgeon. With all of these happening, finally, Jatra was sent to jail. He was charged with Section 17 of the Criminal Penal Code, which made him guilty of sedition and for refusing to obey the British officers. He was sentenced to 1.5 years of life in jail, rigorous imprisonment. But fortunately for him, he just had to serve 1 year of that entire period. But that was bad enough. When he was released, he was so badly broken in terms of his health. He had suffered a lot of illnesses, and because of the rigorousness of his imprisonment, he also had a breakdown of his physical form. And as a result of it, very shortly after he was released, he died. And upon his death, his wish was fulfilled that he should not be cremated for nearly a week. And during that time, all the Oraoni people should be gathering together on that occasion and making use of that opportunity to unite and fight both for their spiritual evolution and also against the British. So this is what the Tana Bhagat movement is all about, and this is the contribution of Jatra Oraon towards birthing the movement and carrying it forward. Tana in Oraoni means pulled by devotion, and Bhagat is the devotee, means devotee. So Tana Bhagat is a movement in which a devotee is pulled by devotion towards God. So it's not the name of a person, it's the name of a very beautiful movement.